Okay, check 1, check 2. All right. I usually don't record from a webcam, so this is kind of new. But I wanted to give everybody an update on the patron games for the Titans Patreon. So if you're seeing this on YouTube and you don't know, I've introduced patron games to our Patreon at a $50 tier, and basically once a month I'll get together with a group of anywhere from 1 to 5 people, depending on how many sign up for each game, to play a game that's a homebrew campaign that I've set up in the world of Altera that will actually be coinciding somewhat close to the timeline that the current podcast Season 2 is on. And so the 3 campaigns are A Kingdom Conquered, taking place in Alestria, post the attack from the dwarves. So the dwarves and the White Order have taken over the city, and the second campaign was the Bloodbreaker, and that one's actually completely filled up. That was set in the Kingdom of Fairhaven, and then so there's no more seats for Fairhaven right now for the Bloodbreaker campaign, and then the Just Out of Reach campaign, which takes place in Diadem Reach, which is the Kingdom of Gold. And we've done probably the least with Diadem Reach. However, there are some major secrets and hidden things underneath Diadem Reach, and it's a big mining kingdom, and so there's lots of different mines, a whole different type of society that's built up within that. And a party will basically get to explore those things. So I wanted to real quick, there's still seats available for Just Out of Reach campaign and the Kingdom Conquered campaign. And so I want to go into a little bit of detail with each of those to let any of you who are still wondering if you want to jump in a game or not. Here's some of the things to expect. Here's some of the more like information around those campaigns. They'll start this coming Friday, the 20th of December. So just a few days before Christmas. Maybe that was a bad planning idea. I think it'll be a blast. I'm super looking forward to these. So for me, it's not like I'm having to take a day off of a vacation to do these. For me, this is like going to be super fun. So anyway, Kingdom Conquered, like I said earlier, it's taking place in the People's Kingdom of Alestria. They've been ravaged by civil war. With the help of the dwarves, the White Order has overthrown the Merchant Council, which was basically the ruling body of Alestria before all of this. And they, for the most part, established Alestria and kind of orchestrated the entire Four Kingdoms Accord, the Merchant Council. The priests of the White Order have mandated fealty to the White God, while the dwarves hold a tight fist over the populace. However, there are those who still hold to hope. Davi, the Red Cleric. Now, we know her to be a Red Cleric, but she, for a long time, posed herself as a Grey Cleric. If you remember from Season 1, Davi was the teacher and mentor for Joan Stormcrown, the character played by Kelsey, my wife, in Titans of Altera. And she left with a group of very skilled warriors and tacticians from Lestrade, if you remember in Season 1, and they chased after the wizard Wilbert, who tried to assassinate, or who successfully assassinated, Captain Donnie Russell. I'm going into some serious lore. If you're not familiar, that's okay. You don't need all of this. I'm just giving you some context for Davi. And herself and Podge, Winnie Dumplekin, another player in the campaign by my sister-in-law Erin, Podge, Winnie's best friend, and Davi are the only 2 members of that team that went into Alestria after Wilbert, who we've not heard of yet. So I've kind of seeded a bit of hey, here's some stuff you may find out about Podge and Davi in this campaign. So Davi, the Red Cleric, has gathered a small resistance within the kingdom. You are one such rebel. So, all the details of your character and stuff are so open to whatever you want them to be. I'm really not interested in restricting anyone in terms of you have to be this or that. However, one clear definer, you are all kind of on the same side of rebelling against the White Order and the dwarves. So whether that means you're a White Cleric who's defecting, whether that means you're a dwarf who doesn't believe in what the dwarves have done, you could also be members of the city itself. I'll go into a little bit more detail here with this campaign. Let me quick touch on the second campaign that still has seats, and then I'll dive into some more of the lore and details around that kingdom and some of the unique things that you'll get to experience as a player. So Just Out of Reach is the other campaign that still has seats open, and it's built along the eastern mountains, Diadem Reach, well fortified and well defended. The Reach has managed to avoid much of the dangers plaguing their countrymen. Life in the Kingdom of Gold goes on, with many of the population continuing to work within the massive mineral-rich mines for which the kingdom is named. Little do they know, something ancient lies beneath the surface, an awesome power terrible to behold, waiting for one who would free it and bring about the end. You are one such miner. So, basically, the Reach has been able to fortify itself against the kind of the attack of the White Order and the Dwarves, and maybe even a Titan or two. The walls of Diadem Reach are incredibly difficult to break, and the kingdom itself is fairly well fortified. And even though there are some forces trying to beset the kingdom, it really hasn't been more than a minor annoyance, and has cut off all trade. That's probably the biggest difficulty that the kingdom is facing. However, like I stated, life goes on, and the miners continue to work because if there's any hope of this war breaking, these resources are going to be needed. And so, you'll be part of a mining crew going into the earth and on your regular mining patrol and uncover something really, really unique. And I'm excited to go into detail as to what those mining crews look like and kind of some of the creative options you'll have as a player to jump into that. So let's go into a little bit more detail, which I currently have not made available anywhere else other than Patreon for the members who are pledging at these tiers. But I want to give you just a little snippet of some of the more detailed content therein. So let me pull that up here real quick. So let's see here. Let's do Just Out of Reach, since we were just talking about that. Then we'll double back around to A Kingdom Conquered. So Just Out of Reach, like I said, takes place in the kingdom of Diadem Reach, and the most important things in this kingdom are the mines and the veins. And so there are, I believe, 3 specific mineral mines and 2 unique ore veins, are veins of certain materials. And each of these different mineral resources basically create a unique little micro community around them. And those communities are all governed by foremen who are kind of elected governors of each of those communities. And each of those communities then vote on a lead foreman, or kind of an ambassador to the 4 kingdoms for the entire community. This is probably the most welcoming and non-xenophobic community in the 4 kingdoms. The 3 major races that make up Diadem Reach are humans who were once Erden, who were once barbarians, the dwarves who have defected from the Dwarven Kingdom 600-700 years ago, and a tribe of orcs who found their way up north for the sake of pillaging, but ended up becoming friends and allies, and now this really unique community of incredibly hardy and strong people. And so the 5 major mineral deposits, there's an ore mine, and the community governed around that is governed by Governor Gregory Pull. However, as we know, for anyone who's been listening to Season 2, Governor Gregory Pull is off at the 4 Kingdoms Alliance in the abandoned Dwarven Kingdom. And so he's kind of out of the picture right now. But there's the gold mine by Governor Shelley Road, the silver mine by Governor Arrow Pull, and that's actually Gregory Pull's sister. She's a half-orc. And the obsidian vein governed by Bridget Pickaxe, and so it's a vein of obsidian. and then a crystalline vein governed by Tim Gruff. And so I'm not going to go into any more detail about the crystal or the obsidian, but those are very unique minerals that may or may not come into play later in any of this lore campaigns. But the thing I'm most excited about with the Just Out of Reach campaign is the miner crews. So these different little groups that miners make up, and they each kind of have different roles. And I wanted these roles to be like somewhat specific, but wide enough that a lot of different types of classes could play them. So the first and foremost, you have the Breaker, and so this is the roll calls for sheer strength. Breakers are hardy folk wielding their hammer pick, which is an item that I'm creating specifically for this, with force and precision. So basically, people of the Reach understand that Altera itself is a magical land, and you can never be too prepared for what you'll find underground. For this reason, crews of 5 or 6 will usually consist of one or more each of these roles, one of which being the Breaker that I just mentioned. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4 other primary roles, but they can also kind of intermix. So you could have someone who does 2 of them, or someone who does nothing but kind of oversight. But I'll get into that as we keep going down. I'll let you know each of them. And yeah, so for me, I wanted to make it so like the Breaker is your strong character. That's either your tank or your heavy DPS ranger, like someone who likes to do who's a little more physical. But then you have the Hammer, which is a clever and quick to action. These engineers and field medics make it their job to solve problems that nobody else saw coming. Not only do the Hammer determine how best to keep a dig safe, but they're responsible for putting out fires, literally sometimes. So this is kind of more of a magical set class. So utility spells, healing spells, druid spells. There's kind of room for a lot of different elements here with the Hammer, but the idea is that these are people who kind of have the ability to kind of handle a lot of various circumstances and provide support for the entire team in unique environments. So you never know when you're digging underground if you're going to end up finding, if you're going to end up dealing with water, if you're going to end up dealing with a collapse, if you're going to end up dealing with gases that can explode into flame, so or even some poisonous plant life or anything underground, or even creatures. That's always a possibility when you're under the earth in a D&D game. So hammers are very important in that way. Then there's the Diver, sometimes reckless. The Divers are nimble and scrappy. They know how to squeeze through tight places and aren't afraid to free climb if need be. They also carry and wield the crew's sword bit, another mining item that I'm going to that I'm creating myself. A twisted blade made for drilling holes in the rock. These spaces left by the sword bit make great handholds when climbing, or perfect little pockets to house explosives. And we'll get into explosives in just a minute. But yeah, basically, that's actually something similar to what a lot of like old school mining is. I tried to actually like read up on mining somewhat. I want this to be very much cloaked in fantasy and not our reality, but I also like drawing from little bits and elements. And a typical like way that you would blast like openings through mountains and things would be to drill into the earth and then put explosives or dynamite into those holes and explode the rock around it. So the sword bit has a couple different uses. It's also a sword, and so kind of fun. Then there's this is probably my favorite team member in a mining crew at Diadem Reach, and it's the Boomer. More or less an explosive expert, whether through alchemy, science, or magic. Okay, Boomer. They love blowing things up. Not every crew has a Boomer, and sometimes the crew's Hammer or Diver will act as a secondary Boomer if necessary. But yeah, so this is the explosives expert. And anyway, makes me laugh. I imagine if anyone's a Boomer, they're going to be getting a lot of, okay, Boomer. So then lastly, but definitely not least, is the crew chief. So intelligent and respected, this individual leads the crew, understanding the ins and outs of each job. The crew chief is not just responsible for the dig, but more importantly responsible for the crew themselves. Oftentimes, the chief will fill one of the needed roles, but on occasion, they'll just be there to provide direction and support. So this could really be anybody. It could be any of the other roles within the crew, but it could also be someone like I think a battle master is what it's called in 5th edition with the fighter class. I think there's a battle master class, which kind of is more of a warlord kind of operation role where you kind of get a look over and help direct what's going on. So super excited about that. I think that's going to be really fun, and most likely going to have some NPCs in that crew, unless it fills up completely, which would be awesome. There still will probably be at least one, maybe 2 NPCs regardless. But yeah, there are still seats open in the Just Out of Reach campaign, and a lot of lore about the forebears and the keepers and some of the wider world of Altera will be seated in this campaign. So each of these campaigns are kind of, they're ways for me to hang out with you guys and have fun. There's the dog. Let's go to A Kingdom Conquered. Let's dive into a little more detail around that campaign. Let me just pull it up real quick. Alright, so Alestria is the hub for all mercantile and distribution between the 4 kingdoms, or at least it was before it got conquered. Everything you can imagine makes its way through the kingdom. The kingdom was founded and led by a mercantile council, which quickly established a monarchy within the kingdom and utilized its central location to broker an alliance between 3 neighboring kingdoms, Lestrade, Diadem-Reach, and Fairhaven. Thus, the 4 Kingdoms Accord was born, with the Queen of Alestria holding absolute authority. There are those within the 4 kingdoms, however, who believe the Queen to be nothing more than a figurehead, with the true power remaining within the Mercantile Council, or the Merchant Council. The capital city is divided up into 7 districts. This is important. One of each of the major markets is led by one of the Merchant Council members. And so it kind of divides up into some of the chief goods that are marketed throughout the 4 kingdoms. So first district is finance, led by that's overseen by Councillor Garrett Bitter. Second district is the district of war, and it is led by Councillor Rain Portentia, who we know is not currently in Alestria. She's actually at the abandoned kingdom of the dwarves with the 4 Kingdoms Alliance. So she's one of the Merchant Council members who escaped Alestria. And then there is the third district, which is the district of law, and it's overseen by Councillor Jackson Pulpit. And then the 4th district is the district of trade, and it's overseen by Councillor Willow Respite. The 5th district is the district of craft, and it is overseen by Councillor Doug Granite. And the 6th district is the district of livestock, and it is led by Councillor Rose Carroll. And the 7th district is the district of produce, and is led by Councillor Sirius Kane, who we know as well fled the kingdom of Alestria along with Rain Portentia. So the chief kind of food distributor, and the chief military officer, basically, of Alestria have both left, and which was a huge boon for the 4 Kingdoms Alliance that are kindly trying to pull together a resurgency at the abandoned Dwarven Kingdom. However, their being gone has left some very serious gaps in the kingdom. So the southern edge of the kingdom, however, where districts 1, 2, 3, and 4 meet, is a massive bazaar, or kind of a huge marketplace. All 4 districts press for leverage of the market, giving it a sort of ebb and flow throughout the years. Before the war, before the kingdom was overtaken, Councillor Rain had actually held the market, was overseeing the bazaar, and she'd been cracking down on the black market, stockpiling military supplies, and after the siege, uncertain of its leadership, the bazaar has become a chaotic place. So this is kind of a unique spot in the kingdom where probably you could imagine a lot of black market and maybe even rebellious activity might be taking place. So the big thing with Alestria are the guilds. So this whole place has a guild for everything. And depending on what kind of guild you come from, there's a good chance you live in one of the specific districts. However, it's not so vast that you can't have members of multiple districts coming together to form a party. So there are guilds for any and all types of goods and services you could imagine. If you're a thief, a farmer, an innkeeper, a baker, butcher, or even a candlestick maker, there's a guild for it. Each guild reports directly to one of the council members, but many of the guilds are allowed to operate independent of each other. So there can be very unique and different cultures set within each guild, and the guilds can be anything from just giant, massive organizations to small kind of niche groups, depending on what their skill is. And a quick note: the Elestrian Guard were under the direction of Councillor Rain, and many of them were forced to flee after the city was taken by the dwarves. So the White Order has given the dwarven forces a standing order to execute any of the guard left in the city. So you could play a character who's one of a previous guard member of the city, one of the Elestrian Guard, who is now kind of like hiding and trying to help take back control of the kingdom, but has a fairly big price on your head. You could also be a thief, you could be a merchant, you could be a wizard. There's really anything you could be, and if you're living in Alestria, there's a good chance you have a tie to some kind of guild. If you want to do any kind of job in the kingdom of Alestria, you kind of have to be part of a guild. There are factions of each of the religious orders in Alestria. But yeah, it's fair. I'm super excited. I think that one's gonna be really fun. I imagine that campaign being a little bit kind of more kind of sneaky, but also probably a fair amount of combat. The idea will be that Davi is kind of orchestrating this rebellion, and so you're kind of going to get your orders from her, and she's kind of gathered groups together. So each of your players will be someone who wants to see an end to the White Order's reign and the dwarven occupation of Alestria. So these are people who want to get the city back. Could be a very lucrative businessman who deals in rather shady dealings and doesn't like the tight fist of the dwarves or the unyielding expectations of the White Order. Could also be a freedom fighter, someone who just believes in the Four Kingdoms and doesn't like this oppressive law that's been brought over the kingdom. So could also be a cleric as well, someone who is hungry for knowledge and believes that the White Order has gone off their rocker. If you are a follower of the Red God, this is the kingdom that you would come from. If you somehow are of a religious order to the Red God, this would be where you would serve. So that's something to note. They're all gonna be really fun campaigns. I'm stoked that the Bloodbreaker is full. That'll be really fun. But I'm also still pumped to play the other two campaigns, even if there's just a few people. And honestly, if there is a few people, those few people are going to be helping me craft and build out some very intense lore for Altera. So I'm using these campaigns as a way to, one, hang out with you guys and spend time with all of you, or any of you who are able. But then also for me, this is a great way to flesh out these worlds. I have such a hard time, I think, just writing out these worlds. It's so much better for me to play in them, to like actually explore them, and to see people react and see what they think. So that'll be really fun. Anyway, like I said, it's currently the Saturday before. I think it's the 14th, and the first game's gonna be starting on the 20th. So if you haven't, please check out the campaigns, see if there's one that you'd like to play. Like I said earlier, these are going to be happening every month, so it will be a continuous story. It's okay if someone has to duck out or come back in. I've DM'd campaigns where players weren't always able to be at every single one, so I don't mind kind of working around that. But yeah, it'll be really fun. If you do decide to support us at one of these levels and join one of these campaigns, all the information that I just gave you, plus more information in terms of how to build your character, what kind of way to go about it, that's all on the Patreon in each of those tiers as well. So you can check that out there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see some of you literally in the world of Altera. Thanks, everybody.